Welcome to the graveyard. I'm Violet Hummingbird, and today is day 6 of Spooky October, where every evening I share with you a true spooky story, and it's always one that I'm actually discovering along with you for the first time. I just skim the stories to see which ones to read, and otherwise I'm reading it with you. So today's story is by Margaret. We'd been lucky to find the house when we moved to Belgium in January 1974. At the same time, General Motors was moving in and taking up all the best rented houses for their stay, so there was nothing much to be had. It was in a good area, too, one of the several houses built in the woods on the outskirts of Antwerp where my husband was going to be working. It was a big 3-story house, about 70 years old. A colonel in the Belgian army had served in the Belgian Congo for many years, had built it. He'd built it in the old colonial style. Nice big rooms with high ceilings and marble floors. Best of all, there was a balustraded veranda that we could sit out on, running the whole length of one wall. It had shallow steps leading up to the white painted front door with its red panelled roof and whitewashed walls. The house was a most attractive proposition. The large garden was overgrown with dense, dark rhododendron bushes which had invaded the knee-high grasses of what had once been a lawn. But we could soon cut that back. It had the adventure of being well away from any neighbors, so the kids would be able to play without disturbing anyone. There would be no complaints about noise. There were 3 bedrooms. My husband and I had one, and as they were still small and the rooms were so large, we put all 3 children together in one room for company. The other room was to be a guest room. We stacked away the suitcases and cartons in the small middle attic and gave the children the sunny, south-facing one as a toy room. The staircase was a bit dark, but I painted it white, and I papered the toy room in a sunshiny yellow, and I painted the wooden beams bright blue. I covered the floor with a multicolored rag rug carpet so it was cheerful and cozy. I planned to use the other attic room as a sewing room, but later when I'd had the time to fix it, it faced north and was damp and very cold, and the wallpaper hung down like cow's udders from the sloppy ceiling. I was really busy unpacking all the boxes and settling us into the new home. There was a great deal to do, finding a school for the children, locating the best shops, arranging for a teacher to come to the house to teach the children to speak Flemish so they could cope at school, and struggling with the linguaphone to learn the language ourselves. Any spare time my husband and I had left was spent working in the garden. It was some weeks before I realized that the children, then aged 7, 5, and 3, would never go alone to the toy room, always waiting for a brother or sister to go with them. Mike, our middle child, talked sometimes about Bart, who he played with in the attic, but then he always had imaginary friends. So it was not until Grandma and Granddad came to stay that I began to take notice. It was getting dark one evening when my mother-in-law came into the kitchen. "Isn't it time you took that little boy home?" she said. "It's nearly bedtime." "What little boy?" I asked. "The one who's playing with the kids in the top landing." I was puzzled. Carl? The boy next door sometimes came out to play, but I hadn't seen him tonight. I went up to look, but there were only our 3 there. Was Carl here?" I asked. "No." "Anybody else?" They looked guilty, but shook their heads. A quick look round reassured me, and I went back downstairs. "You must have been mistaken," I told my mother-in-law. She was unconvinced. "It was a little boy," she said. "They were playing at dressing up." It was a few nights later that I woke up and heard Granddad prowling about in the attic. I got up. "Anything wrong, Dad?" I asked. "No," he said, puzzled. I went to the bathroom and thought I saw Sam at the top landing, but when I got up the stairs, he wasn't there. I checked the bedroom, but both my sons were fast asleep in their beds. My little daughter was sleeping too. You must have been dreaming, Dad, I said. Neither my husband nor I ever saw the little boy. It was some time before I got around to stripping the walls of the sewing room. It was always so cold in there. I sized the walls and coated them with foil to damp-proof it, then papered over with bright floral paper. But it was still too cold to work in comfortably. I had my sewing machine up there and a long box the kids called the coffin that I kept my sewing materials in. The children did not like that room. They dashed past it as if the door was open, and refused to come in to try on the things I was making for them, though they couldn't tell me why. Then our son Sam broke his arm. It had been a bad break, and the anesthetic had worn off when we got back from the hospital, and he was in pain. So I left him rolled up in a rug in the settee while I drove to the pharmacy to get the tablets to relieve the pain, to stop the swelling of his arm inside the plaster. He was on his own, and as I left the other two with a friend while I took Sam to the hospital, when I got back 10 minutes later, he was nowhere to be seen. I called his name, and he crept out from his hiding place behind the settee. "What are you doing there, Sam?" I asked. "I didn't like the PE teacher," he said. "The PE teacher?" I asked, mystified. "She came in here," he said. "Oh, Sam, you shouldn't have opened the door when Mom wasn't with you," I said, disturbed. "I didn't. She came in the back." I went and looked in the back, and the back door was locked and bolted just as I had left it. "What did she do?" I asked Sam. "She came over to the fireplace and fluffed up her hair in a mirror." "But there isn't a mirror over the fireplace," I said. "She thought there was," said Sam. "Well, where is she now?" I asked him. "She went into the air," said Sam, "so I hid." Some time later, when I was alone in the house one day, I was working in the sewing room when I became convinced there was something in the corner behind me. The room, which always felt cold, had become icy, and the atmosphere felt so malevolent I didn't dare turn around. I left my sewing and fled upstairs. I must admit I was afraid to go back. After that, I moved my sewing downstairs and kept that door shut. As I had said, I never actually saw anyone, but sometimes we watched door handles turn and doors open, but I saw no one come in. We'd become accustomed to the ghosts who shared our house, and apart from the sewing machine, learned to live with them. Nobody seemed to know anything about our house. Then some years later, not long before we left Belgium, an old neighbor told me about it. "A nice family lived there," he said. "There was an old man, his daughter who was a teacher in the local school, her husband who worked the mercantile, and one child. They were something to do with the resistance in the war. They used to hide people trying to escape from the Germans. One of the ones they hid was spying for the Germans and gave them away. They came and took them away one night. We heard they'd been shot. I don't know what happened to the child. Bart, he was called." So let me know in the comments below what you thought of that story, and if you have a spooky story of your own, a true one, please email it to me if you want me to share it on my channel. And my email is heytherehummingbird@runbox.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow for another spooky story. Happy Spooky October. Thank you so much for being here.